Picture this. It's July 8th, 2022. A luxury home in Cali, Colombia. You know, the kind of place you see in Architectural Digest. Floor-to-ceiling windows, custom furniture, art on every wall. The Colombian federal agents ring the doorbell at dawn. Inside, according to what would later be documented in court records, a 71-year-old fashion designer is getting ready for her day. 25 years building a brand, 300 employees, handbags in Bergdorf Goodman's Fifth Avenue windows. Britney Spears, Victoria Beckham, Salma Hayek, they're all carrying her bags. The agents have arrest warrants, wildlife smuggling, conspiracy, false statements to federal officials. The fashion designer's name is Nancy Gonzalez. You've probably never heard of her, but here's what makes this story different from every other true crime case about a wealthy person breaking the law. Nancy Gonzalez went to prison. The retailers who sold her bags, they walked away. The celebrities who wore them, silent. The luxury stores that put them in their windows, no consequences. So let me ask you a question that's going to follow us through this entire story. Who faces consequences when the wealthy break the law? And who get to walk away because they have a brand to protect? I'm Steve Rode. I spent 2 years as a police dispatcher taking emergency calls. I also worked surveillance photography with local law enforcement. And later in my career, I was chief pilot for public safety operations, flying missions for police, fire, and state departments. Throughout this 2-part series, you'll hear from Dr. Patricia Wells, who I love. I want to be completely transparent with you. Dr. Patricia Wells is a fictional character that we created for this podcast. She's not a real person, however. Her insights are drawn from established criminological research, academic literature, and consultation with actual subject matter experts. Think of her as a composite expert, a way for us to explore the academic and psychological context behind these cases in a conversational format. She's a friend of the podcast, and her analysis helps us understand the deeper questions these stories raise. Before we dive into Nancy's story, I want to mention something. This isn't your typical true crime podcast where you just listen and just walk away. Here, you can participate. You can be a part of the investigation. At the end of today's episode, I'm going to invite you to help research the luxury fashion supply chain and who's accountable when rules get broken. You could become part of the story, so stick around to the end. Today's case is unlike anything we've covered before. It's not about murder, it's not about crypto, it's not about scams. No, there's no body, no blood, no weapon. But it is about justice and whether justice means the same thing for everyone. According to federal court documents, Nancy Gonzalez ran a wildlife smuggling operation for over 3 years. She recruited couriers, regular people, employees, friends, to smuggle handbags made from protected reptile skins into the United States without proper documentation. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service records show that she was warned repeatedly. In 2016, in 2017, she continued anyway. The bags were sold at Bergdorf Goodman, Saks, Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, Harrods. Retail value? Well, according to the indictment, between $1.4 and $2.6 million. Nancy Gonzalez was arrested. She was extradited. She was prosecuted. And she was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Her company went bankrupt. 300 Colombian women lost their jobs. Her life's work gone. But here's what court records don't show you finding. Any charges filed against the luxury retailers who purchased those bags. Any investigation of the celebrities who wore them. Any accountability for the buyers who put them in Fifth Avenue windows. The prosecutor would later say, when shown a video of retailers praising Nancy Gonzalez, that those retailers must be regretting they were ever put up to that and have their own brands to protect. Yeah, you heard that right. Their own brands to protect. This is a story about fashion and wildlife. But it's really a story about who faces consequences and who doesn't. About immigrant success stories and whether we destroy them differently than we treat old money fashion houses. It's about what happens when you're brown-skinned, Colombian, and breaking the same rules that European luxury brands break with a slap on the wrist. Was Nancy Gonzalez a criminal who deserved what she got, or was she a scapegoat targeted because she was convenient while the powerful escaped accountability? Now that's the question we're going to explore together. And I don't think the answer is simple by any means. And it's what got me really thinking about this. And I want you to think about it too. So this episode is part 1 of 2, because we're going to see how this empire was built and how the very same people who helped build it walked away when it collapsed. Let's start with something that tells you this story is more complicated than the criminal gets caught. According to archive forum posts from Purse Forum, the largest online community of handbag collectors, yeah, that's a thing, people had a very strong opinion about Nancy Gonzalez's case. But those opinions didn't line up at all. Camp 1 thought she got what she deserved. One user wrote, according to forum archives, always wondered why her exotic leather bags were more reasonably priced than other designers. Apparently, her business model included smuggling to keep expenses low. Another posted, that seems pretty clear-cut to me. She broke the law repeatedly after being warned. Actions have consequences. These weren't prosecutors writing these posts. These were regular people saying she knew what she was doing. She chose profit over following the rules. She got caught, and that's how justice works. But Camp 2 saw something completely different. According to the same forum threads, other users were furious, but not at Nancy, at the system. One user wrote, I can't understand why an established designer would pay people to smuggle bags 4 at a time via plane. Doesn't make a lick of sense for the well-established designer. Another got more pointed. Why did this designer go to prison while retailers walked free? Bergdorf Goodman sold those bags. Saks sold those bags. Where are their charges? And this one, according to the archives, cut to the heart of it. Why prosecute the Colombian woman, but not the American corporations? This is selective prosecution. She was a convenient target. 2 camps, both convinced they're right, both asking completely different questions. Camp 1 asks, why did she think she could get away with breaking federal law? Camp 2 asks, why is she the only one who didn't get away with it? And here's what makes this case so difficult. Both questions are fair. Both camps have a point. Both perspectives contain truth. And according to court documents, Nancy Gonzalez absolutely broke the law, systematically, over years, after warnings. And that's not disputed. But it's complicated. According to those same court documents and media reports, the luxury retailers who purchased and sold those smuggled bags, they faced no investigation. The celebrities who wore them and appeared in promotional materials, no questions asked. The 40 or more couriers per season who actually smuggled the bags through customs, no charges filed. Only Nancy Gonzalez, a Colombian immigrant, self-made, lacking institutional protection, went to prison. Now, one forum user noticed something else. According to the thread, though at the time Nancy Gonzalez is not at the top of her favor of popularity in the fashion scene, this isn't being covered as widely as I imagined it would be. Good point. A fashion designer goes to federal prison for wildlife smuggling. Major luxury retailers are implicated. Celebrity endorsements everywhere. And the story barely makes a ripple in mainstream media. Why? And here's something even stranger. According to the resale market records, Nancy Gonzalez handbags continue to sell on The RealReal, Fashion File, and other platforms throughout her prosecution and after her conviction. In February 2025, 10 months after her sentencing, the RealReal blog published an article titled, Top 5 Nancy Gonzalez Handbags. There's no mention of the criminal case, no ethical disclaimer, just, hey, these bags are for sale. The bags still have value. The brand wasn't toxic. Collectors weren't boycotting. The question is, why? What happened? To understand that, you have to know who Nancy Gonzalez was before any of this happened, before the arrests, before the headlines, when she was just a single mother in Colombia with a dream. To understand how this all fell apart, we need to understand how it started. Nancy Teresa Gonzalez de Barbary was born in 1952 in Cali, Colombia. According to character reference letters filed with the court, her childhood was marked by tragedy early. When Nancy was 9 years old, her father died, leaving her mother alone to raise 5 children. Colombia in the 1960s and 70s was not an easy place to be a single mother. According to court documents, Nancy's mother took on both roles, mom and dad, without complaint. She maintained what Nancy described as an open-door policy, where family and friends were always welcome. She made sure her children felt loved and supported through life's obstacles. That resilience, that refusal to give up when things got hard, is something Nancy learned early, and it would define everything that came after. According to defense filings, Nancy married young and had 2 children, Santiago and Cristina. But the marriage didn't last. According to court records, her husband divorced her, leaving Nancy alone with 2 small children and no clear path forward. She was in her early 30s, a single mother in Colombia, in a country still dealing with FARC narco-terrorists and widespread poverty, particularly among women. So Nancy did what her mother taught her to do. She didn't give up. She found a sewing machine and she started making handbags. According to court documents, this was the late 1980s, and Nancy worked from her house, just her and that sewing machine. She taught herself design. She learned about exotic skins, python, caiman, crocodile, and she discovered that she had an eye for textures and for color, and for what made a handbag special and desirable. And slowly, bag by bag, customer by customer, she built something incredible. By the early 1990s, according to business records, Nancy had incorporated her company, D&M International. She hired artisans, mostly women. Many were heads of households just like her. According to character references, she paid above-market wages, offered pension plans, helped employees send their children to college. But here's what made Nancy different from just another small manufacturer. She understood that Colombian luxury could compete with European brands, that handbags made in Cali could sit on shelves next to Hermes and Gucci, that the world didn't have to see Colombian fashion as second tier, and she was going to prove it. According to fashion industry reports, by the late 1990s, Nancy's designs were getting noticed. The handbags were beautiful, exotic python and caiman skins in rich colors, expert craftsmanship like you would not believe, and distinctive style. But they were also affordable compared to European luxury bags. A Nancy Gonzalez bag might retail for $2,000 to $4,000. A comparable Hermes bag, $8,000 to $15,000. She found her market. Women who wanted luxury but couldn't or wouldn't pay Hermes prices. But to truly compete with the European brands, she needed something they all had: a presence in America. According to court records, Nancy needed American distribution. The real money, the real prestige, came from placing bags in Manhattan department stores, in Bergdorf Goodman, in Saks Fifth Avenue, in Neiman Marcus. And that's where you became a legitimate luxury brand. So, according to business filings, in 2007, Nancy established Zuniga Limited, a New York-based subsidiary company. And she opened a showroom at 5 East 57th Street in Manhattan. Prime real estate, walking distance from Bergdorf's. And she hired Eric Schneider, an American citizen, to manage the showroom and handle relationships with U.S. retailers. It worked! According to court documents by the 2010s, Nancy Gonzalez was everywhere. Bergdorf Goodman gave her a dedicated section on the first floor of their Fifth Avenue flagship. Saks featured her bags prominently. Neiman Marcus? Well, they carried her in dozens of stores. Harrods in London stocked her line. And according to sales records, she was distributed in over 300 luxury retailers worldwide. The bags appeared on red carpets. According to media reports, Britney Spears carried one. So did Victoria Beckham, Salma Hayek, Eva Longoria. The brand got name-dropped in The Devil Wears Prada. Stanley Tucci's character specifically mentions Nancy Gonzalez bags. They appeared in Sex and the City too. According to court filings, at her peak, Nancy employed over 300 people in Colombia. 95% were women. Most were heads of households. The Metropolitan Museum of Art exhibited her work in 2008. Fashion Week in New York City, February and September, like clockwork. She was there. Buyers loved her. Retailers promoted her. She was living proof that a single mother from Cali, Colombia, could build something that mattered, that competed, that won. But there was a problem that would eventually destroy everything. Here's the thing about luxury fashion that most people don't understand. It's heavily regulated, especially when you're using exotic animal skins. According to federal law, any product made from reptile skins, python, caiman, crocodile, must comply with CITES, That's the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Let me break that down on what that actually means according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regulations. First, The skins must come from legal sources, either wild-caught with proper permits or farm-raised with documentation proving the animals were bred in captivity. Second, every shipment must have CITES permits from both the exporting country and the importing country. That's paperwork, time-consuming, lots of it, from Colombia and from the United States. Third, every individual item must have a CITES tag attached, a physical tag that proves this specific bag came from a legal source. Fourth, the shipment must be properly packaged with invoices and commercial documentation. And it must arrive at a designated port where U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service inspectors can examine it. Well, according to court testimony from fish and wildlife officials, this process takes time. Takes weeks. Sometimes more. You can't just fly bags into New York whenever you feel like it. You have to coordinate with Colombian authorities. You have to try to coordinate with U.S. authorities. You have to plan ahead, way ahead. And if you're a fashion designer trying to meet Fashion Week deadlines, well, that's a problem. According to court records, for years, Nancy had been importing sample bags the right way. Mostly. She'd send commercial shipments through proper channels with all the documentation. But occasionally, when she needed samples fast, and I mean real fast, to meet obligations, like when Fashion Week was breaking and approaching and the official shipment wouldn't arrive in time, she'd ask Fish and Wildlife for an accommodation. She'd say, I have an employee flying to New York. Can they carry 4 sample bags in their luggage? We'll have all the permits and tags. You can inspect them at the airport. And according to testimony, Fish and Wildlife would sometimes say, yeah, no problem. It was an informal accommodation, not a standard procedure, but it was occasionally allowed. But in February 2016, according to official records, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service withdrew that accommodation. No more passenger imports. Period. The reason? According to court testimony, it was all about staffing. Fish and Wildlife didn't have inspectors available at odd hours to meet passengers at various airports. If Nancy wanted to import bags, she had to do it through official commercial channels, with advance notice, with proper documentation, through designated ports, checking all the right boxes. Well, Nancy received this notification according to court records. She got it in writing. It was clear, and it was unambiguous. But Fashion Week was in 2 weeks, and Nancy made a choice. One that would set a pattern that would repeat for years, until 2016, when federal agents showed up at her door with a very clear message. According to court documents, February 2016 is when the smuggling began. Nancy knew she couldn't import bags legally through passengers anymore. She knew the rules had changed. But Fashion Week waited for no one. So, according to testimony from cooperating witnesses, she did it anyway. Without the CITES tags, without the permits, without the proper packaging. Just employee flies to New York, carries 4 bags and personal luggage, delivers them to the Manhattan showroom. And if customs asks, according to witness statements, Nancy instructed them to say the bags were personal items or gifts for relatives. Well, the only problem with that is that's a federal crime. Making false statements to custom officials. 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. According to court records in September 2016, 6 months later, one of the couriers got caught. Diego Araldo flew from Colombia to Newark Liberty International Airport carrying 4 caiman skin handbags. I mean, sure, they were beautiful. But a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service special agent stopped him, asked about the bags, and according to the agent's report, he lied. He said they were personal items to be gifted to a friend. The agent wasn't convinced. According to testimony, Geraldo was questioned extensively, and the handbags were closely examined. But without proof of systemic smuggling, no arrest was made. According to the court record, he was allowed to continue, and he delivered the bags to the Manhattan showroom. Nancy received a warning. So did Geraldo. According to Fish and Wildlife Service records, they knew authorities were suspicious. They knew they'd been caught, or nearly caught. They kept smuggling. According to court documents throughout 2016 and 2017, Nancy received multiple warnings from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service officials. There were seizures. There were explicit notifications that her import practices violated U.S. law. And the sentencing judge would later say, according to court transcripts, she was specifically told that what she was doing was in violation of U.S. law. But Fashion Week deadlines kept coming, and Nancy kept recruiting couriers. While federal agents were building a case in the background, Nancy's brand was everywhere in the foreground, on red carpets, in fashion magazines, on the arms of some of the biggest celebrities in the world. While Nancy was smuggling bags, she was also building her brand in the most visible way: celebrities. According to media reports and social media archives, the list of celebrities photographed with Nancy Gonzalez bags reads like a Hollywood roll call. Britney Spears, Victoria Beckham, Salma Hayek, Eva Longoria, Reese Witherspoon, Sofia Vergara. These weren't product placements. According to fashion industry observers, celebrities genuinely loved the bags. The python skin had gorgeous texture. The colors were rich, and the craftsmanship was excellent. Mwah! And the price? While still luxury, was accessible compared to Hermes. According to court records, Nancy cultivated these relationships. She'd send bags to stylists. She'd work with publicists to get them on red carpets. And when a celebrity was photographed carrying a Nancy Gonzalez bag, according to sales records, retailers would immediately place new orders. This is how fashion works. Celebrity visibility drives retail demand. Retail demand drives production. And production drives revenue. And revenue funds the next collection. According to promotional materials filed as evidence, luxury retailers loved Nancy. In a 2019 video, top buyers from Bergdorf Goodman and Saks Fifth Avenue praised her creativity, productivity, and humanity. They called her a joy to work with, and they said her bags flew off the shelves. Nobody asked where the bags came from. According to testimony, retailers assumed samples that Nancy showed in her Manhattan showroom came through legal channels. They were purchasing from an established brand with a Manhattan showroom and 25 years of history. Why would they question it? But here's the question that would later haunt everyone. Retailers have compliance departments. They have lawyers. They have due diligence processes. And according to federal import regulations, anyone purchasing wildlife products has a legal duty to ensure those products entered the country legally. Did Bergdorf Goodman verify sites documentation? Did Saks ask for proof of legal import? Did Neiman Marcus conduct due diligence on the samples they were shown? Well, there's no evidence in the court record that they did. But there's also no evidence they were ever asked. Maybe that's because nobody wanted to know the answer. Because knowing the scale of what Nancy was actually doing would have made everyone very uncomfortable. According to testimony from cooperating witness Paola Soto, the smuggling operation grew massively. What started as an occasional rush delivery became systematic. Paola worked for Nancy's Colombian company. According to her testimony, Nancy recruited her to help coordinate couriers. Paola would recruit other employees, friends, family members. And according to court records, she reported that during major collection events, Fashion Week, Resort Week, Nancy would recruit up to 40 passengers simultaneously. I mean, think about that for a second. According to witness testimony, 40 people flying from Colombia to various U.S. airports, each carrying 4 handbags, all arriving within days of each other, and all converging on the Manhattan showroom at 5 East 57th Street. According to court documents, Nancy paid for everything. Round-trip airline tickets from Colombia to New York or Miami, hotel accommodations, and according to testimony, a $600 maintenance fee per courier trip. The couriers weren't sophisticated criminals. According to court records, they were just regular people. CDMI employees, friends of employees, family members, people who trusted Nancy and thought they were just helping her out. Nancy told them, according to testimony, that, this is all fine, don't worry about it. That it was just samples. That customs doesn't care. And if customs asks, just say the bags are personal gifts. According to Fish and Wildlife Service investigators, they estimated that between February 2016 and April 2019, 3 years, Nancy smuggled between 788 and 1,307 handbags. The retail value, according to court calculations, between $1.4 and $2.6 million. That's not samples. That's an operation. And in the middle of all of that, in the middle of the smuggling, the warnings, the escalating operation, Nancy's life was about to be hit by a tragedy that would change everything. In March 2017, according to court documents, something terrible happened, and it shattered Nancy's world. Her son Santiago died by suicide. He was 40 years old. Santiago Barberi Gonzalez wasn't just Nancy's son. According to character reference letters, he was more than that. He was the co-founder and creative director of the Nancy Gonzalez label. He'd worked alongside his mother for years. He'd helped modernize the brand, and according to those who knew him, Santiago brought a new energy and new ideas and new connections to the fashion industry. And according to the defense's sentencing memorandum, Santiago had struggled with depression. The work of the company, the beautiful relationships he'd forged in the fashion industry, had given him purpose and filled him with joy. But it wasn't enough to overcome the darkness he faced. According to court filings, Nancy was shattered by her son's death. The pain was unbearable. And according to character references, not a single day passed without her experiencing what she described as an unexplainable pain in her heart that makes it hard to breathe. She carried with her, according to her own later statement, a constant feeling of emptiness, a feeling that a part of her died. the day her son took his own life. The question the court would later wrestle with: did Santiago's death contribute to Nancy's continued violations? Well, according to the defense, after Santiago died, Nancy lost track of things. The business became the only piece of her son she had left. She held on tight. She wanted to preserve his legacy, and in her grief, according to this argument, compliance failures happened. According to the prosecution, Santiago died in March 2017, more than a year after the smuggling began, and Nancy had already been warned multiple times by then. His death, tragic as it was, didn't excuse continued criminal conduct. But both things, according to the facts, might be true. Grief doesn't erase responsibility, but it does provide some context for why someone might make decisions they otherwise wouldn't make. So I turn to our friend, Dr. Wells. Hey, Dr. Wells, thank you so much for taking the time again. I'm really struggling with this part. Santiago's death was devastating, there's no doubt about that. But the prosecution has a point. Nancy had already been warned before he died. So when does grief become an explanation versus an excuse for continuing that kind of criminal behavior?
That's the question criminal courts struggle with constantly, Steve. Acute grief genuinely impairs executive function, the part of your brain that evaluates risk, considers consequences, makes rational decisions. When Nancy's son died, especially by suicide, that wasn't just sadness, that was trauma that literally changes how your prefrontal cortex processes information.
So I think what you're saying is that her brain literally wasn't working the same way after Santiago died. Is that right?
Exactly. Nancy clung to the business because it was Santiago's legacy. That's textbook grief behavior, holding tight to what connects you to the person you lost, but holding tight meant continuing to break the law.
But that doesn't make the crime okay, right? Am I hearing this wrong? The prosecution kept saying she'd been warned multiple times.
That's the distinction courts make. Grief can explain why someone's judgment was impaired, but it doesn't justify the harm caused. Nancy's pain was real. The law she broke was also real. Both things can be true, and that's what makes accountability in the context of trauma so agonizing, because punishing someone doesn't erase their grief, and acknowledging their grief doesn't erase their crime.
All right, well, that does make sense. Thank you, Doc. While Nancy was navigating grief, federal agents were navigating something else. The final stages of a 3-year investigation that was about to come to a head. According to court documents, by April 2019, U.S. authorities, they'd seen enough. Fish and Wildlife Service agents had been building a case for 3 years. They had witness interviews, they had travel records, they had seized handbags, they had documentation showing systematic violations, and they had a cooperating witness. Or maybe more than one. According to court records, Eric Schneider, the American general manager of Nancy's Manhattan showroom, agreed to cooperate. He told investigators everything: how the bags arrived, how many, how often. And according to his testimony, he estimated approximately 1,000 bags had been smuggled through the operation. And then Palo Soto flipped. According to court filings, she provided detailed testimony about the courier network, how many people were recruited, how they were instructed to lie to customs, and how Nancy coordinated everything. According to court documents, by 2019, federal prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida had enough evidence for an indictment. But there was a problem. You see, Nancy lived in Colombia. She was a Colombian citizen. She'd never set foot in a U.S. federal court. According to extradition records in April 2019, prosecutors requested an arrest warrant. Colombian authorities were happy to comply. They agreed to detain her pending extradition proceedings. But Nancy wasn't arrested yet. According to court records, she continued operating her business through 2019, 2020, and into 2021. And then the pandemic hit. According to business records, COVID-19 devastated the luxury fashion industry. Fashion Week went virtual, retailers closed, orders dried up. And according to court filings, Nancy's company struggled. She laid off employees, she cut production. She fought to keep her business alive. And according to U.S. prosecutors, she kept smuggling, even during the pandemic, even with everything collapsing around her. The indictment would later allege violations through at least 2019, with some evidence suggesting continued violations into 2020. The investigation had taken 3 long years, but the arrest would take 3 minutes. It's July 8th, 2022, Friday morning in Cali, Colombia. According to arrest records, Colombian federal agents arrived at Nancy's home at dawn. They had an arrest warrant: wildlife smuggling, conspiracy, false statements to federal officials. Nancy opened the door, and according to court documents, she was 71 years old. Her son had been dead for 5 years. Her company was struggling. Her employees depended on her. The agents placed her under arrest. According to media reports from Colombia, Nancy was taken to the Buen Pastor prison. It's a woman's prison in Bogota. Maximum security. According to her later testimony, the facility housed hardened and dangerous criminals. Nancy Gonzalez, fashion designer, employer of 300 women, single mother who built an empire from a sewing machine, was now a federal prisoner in Colombia. Back in the United States, according to court records, luxury retailers scrambled. Bergdorf Goodman, no comment. Saks Fifth Avenue, no comment. Neiman Marcus? Nope, no comment. According to the prosecutor's later statement, those retailers must be regretting they ever put up that promotional video. They had their own brands to protect. They protected their brands, just like the prosecutor would later say. According to legal filings, while Nancy was in Colombian prison, her attorneys were fighting the extradition, arguing that she should face trial in Colombia, that she was too old for U.S. federal prison, that she had health issues, that the charges should be resolved administratively. But the U.S. government, according to court documents, pushed back hard. Nancy Gonzalez had violated U.S. law, smuggled goods into U.S. territory, made false statements to U.S. federal officers, and she would face trial in the United States. Colombia agreed. According to extradition records, the evidence was clear. The treaty was binding, and Nancy would be extradited. According to court filings, by August 2023, 14 months after her arrest, Colombia approved the extradition, and Nancy was transferred to U.S. custody. Federal marshals flew her to Miami, and according to transport records, she appeared before Judge Robert Scola Jr. in the Southern District of Florida. According to court transcripts, Nancy's attorneys immediately began negotiating. Could they resolve this without a trial? Could they get a deal? The government, according to prosecutors, was willing to talk. But they wanted certain things. They wanted a guilty plea. They wanted cooperation. And they wanted acknowledgement of the harm caused. And here's where Nancy did something that surprised a lot of people, according to the court observers. She pleaded guilty. No deal. No promises about sentencing. No guarantees. According to the plea agreement, Nancy admitted to conspiracy to smuggle goods into the United States and making false statements to federal officers. She admitted she'd recruited couriers. She admitted she'd ignored warnings. And she admitted she'd lied to federal agents. Nancy accepted responsibility completely, without reservation. Why would she do that? Why plead guilty with no real deal? Well, according to her attorneys, later arguments, Nancy genuinely felt remorse. She was 71 years old, facing the end of her life. She didn't want to go to trial. She didn't want to drag her employees through testimony. She wanted to accept her punishment and move forward. According to prosecutors, she pleaded guilty because the evidence was overwhelming. She had no defense. A trial would have been a disaster. Pleading guilty was her best option. But both things, according to court records, might actually be true. You see, according to court documents, Nancy was released on bond after her plea. GPS monitoring, confined to her daughter's home in Miami, and awaiting sentencing. The sentencing guidelines, according to federal calculations, recommended 30 to 37 months in federal prison. Nancy had already served 14 months in Colombia. Would the judge give her credit for that time? Would he sentence her to time served? Would he impose the full guideline range? April 2024, the sentencing hearing approaches. According to court transcripts, prosecutor Watts Fitzgerald will argue that Nancy deserves significant prison time, that her crime was egregious, that she turned her mission into producing felons by recruiting couriers, and that she's like a cocaine kingpin. His actual comparison, well, that was because she exploited vulnerable people for profit. Nancy's defense team will argue the opposite, according to their sentencing memo, that she's been treated most unfairly, that other designers do the same thing with administrative penalties, that she's been made an example of because she's Colombian, or because she lacks institutional protection, or because prosecutors need a headline. Judge Scola will have to sort through it all, the law, the facts. The question of whether justice means treating everyone the same or whether it means some people pay prices while others never face those consequences. In that courtroom, according to people who were there, Nancy Gonzalez will do something unexpected, something that shows you who she is beneath the defendant label. She'll speak directly to the judge. No prepared statement read by her attorney. Her words and her voice. And what she says will make you question everything you think you know about this case. Because here's the thing about justice. It's not just about what someone did. It's about who decides what happens next, and whether that decision would be the same for everyone, or only for people who don't have brands to protect. We're going to walk into that courtroom together. We're going to hear exactly what Nancy said, what the prosecutor argued, and what the judge decided. And we're going to ask the question that haunts this entire case. Was justice served? Or did we just watch the criminal justice system do what it always does? Punish the convenient while protecting the powerful. That's next time on True Crime Cases You Haven't Heard, Part 2, The Reckoning. Before Part 2 drops, I have a research opportunity for you. We've talked about how Nancy Gonzalez smuggled handbags into the United States, how luxury retailers sold those bags, how the prosecution focused on Nancy while retailers faced no consequences. But here's what I want to know. Is this pattern unique to Nancy's case? Or is this how luxury fashion works? So here's your research assignment. Pick one luxury brand you're familiar with, any brand that sells exotic leather goods. Could be Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Prada, anyone. And research their exotic leather sourcing policies. Look for, first, do they publicly disclose where their python, crocodile, or caiman skins come from? What farms, what countries? Second, have they ever been cited for CITES violations or wildlife trafficking concerns? You can search news archives, legal databases, or environmental watchdog reports. Third, if they've been caught with violations, what happened? Fines? Criminal charges? Or did it quietly disappear? All right, this is important. Stick to public records and published sources only. Don't contact anyone involved in cases or invade anyone's privacy. We don't need that. We're researching systems and patterns, not individuals. When you're done, go to truecrimeunheard.com and click the Submit Research button. Fill out the form. Tell me which brand you researched, what you found, and whether you were surprised by the level of transparency or lack of it. I'll compile your findings and share them in Part 2 or in a follow-up episode. You could become a part of this investigation. Until then, I invite you to share your thoughts. What do you think about this case so far? Is Nancy Gonzalez the villain who got caught? Or is she a victim of selective prosecution? Or somehow both? Visit truecrimeunheard.com for case files and transcripts and more. And while you're there, sign up for email notifications so you know when Part 2 drops. I also send out weekly cold case update emails, cases that need attention, new developments, and stories worth following. Just sign up for the email notification at truecrimeunheard.com. You can also find true crime cases you haven't heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere you listen. If this case made you think, please like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're listening on. And do me a solid. Leave a 5-star review if you can. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story. These lesser-known cases deserve attention. You can follow on social media for updates, case files, or more discussions about cases. But I'm Steve Rode, and I want to thank you for listening. Until next time, I want 3 things for you. I want you to stay curious, I want you to stay safe, and I want you to stay subscribed. Bye.